The champagne glass caught the light as Marcus raised it high above his head. And in that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. We were sitting in Luminaire, the most expensive restaurant in the city, surrounded by 53 people I barely knew. The crystal chandeliers above us sparkled like diamonds, and the entire room had gone silent, waiting for what they thought would be a marriage proposal. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Marcus stood there in his perfectly tailored navy suit, his Rolex catching the candlelight, that confident smile on his face that I'd fallen in love with 18 months ago. But something in his eyes was different, something cold. "I brought you all here tonight as witnesses," he began, and my hands started trembling in my lap. This was it. This was the moment my life would change forever. I forced a smile, trying to look natural even though I felt like I might throw up. To witness the end of an experiment. The words didn't register at first. Around me I heard confused murmurs. Someone laughed nervously. I kept smiling, not understanding. Marcus looked down at me, and that's when I saw it. Not love. Not affection. Triumph. For 18 months, I've been testing whether Claire Morrison could be wife material. His voice carried across the silent room. And I'm here to announce the results. My smile froze on my face. My brain couldn't process what was happening. This had to be a joke. Some kind of elaborate setup before the real proposal. But Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger, more confident. "She can't cook anything that doesn't come from a box." A few people laughed. Actually laughed. "She works so much she'll never prioritize a family." My chest felt tight. Couldn't breathe. "She dresses like a college student unless I specifically tell her what to wear." I looked down at the tight red bandage dress he'd picked out for me, the one I'd felt uncomfortable in all evening. "She has no ambition beyond wiping kids' noses for minimum wage." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the white tablecloth, trying to anchor myself to reality. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not like this. Not in front of all these people with their phones out, recording every second of my humiliation. Marcus leaned down, his cologne overwhelming, and said the words that shattered me completely. "You'd never be a good wife, Claire. I'm not marrying you. This whole thing was a test, and you failed." He sat back down, looking pleased with himself, and that's when I saw it. As his jacket fell open, there in the inner pocket was a white plastic pregnancy test. 2 pink lines clearly visible. My blood turned to ice. I wasn't pregnant. We'd been careful. We'd always been careful. That test wasn't mine. But it was someone's. I sat there, frozen, while 53 people stared at me. Some with pity in their eyes. Some with barely concealed glee at the drama. All of them with their phones pointed in my direction, capturing my humiliation for social media, for their group chats, for whatever sick entertainment value my pain provided. I could hear whispers. "Oh my God. I can't believe he actually did it. She looks like she's going to cry. This is insane." A woman at the table next to ours looked away quickly, guilt flashing across her face. Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a message I could see clearly. "Baby, are you almost done? I'm waiting in the car." Something inside me cracked, but it wasn't what Marcus expected. It wasn't the complete destruction he'd planned for. It was something else. Something harder. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking but holding me. I picked up my purse, a small black clutch that Marcus had also chosen because my regular bag was too casual. My voice, when it came out, was steadier than I expected. "Thank you," I said, looking directly at Marcus, "for showing me exactly who you are." Then I turned and walked out of that restaurant with my head high and my spine straight, even though every step felt like walking through broken glass. I made it to the street before my legs gave out. The November rain had started, cold and relentless, soaking through my dress within seconds. I collapsed against the brick wall of the building next door, and that's when the tears came. Not quiet, dignified tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for 20 minutes in that rain, mascara running down my face, my carefully styled hair plastered to my head, until a kind Uber driver pulled up and asked if I needed help. The drive home was a blur. The driver tried to make small talk, asking about my night, and I just stared out the window, watching the city lights blend together through my tears. When I finally got to my studio apartment, it felt too small, too quiet, suffocating. Pepper, my three-legged rescue cat, rubbed against my legs, meowing with concern. Animals know. They always know when something's wrong. I sank down onto the floor, still in that wet dress, and Pepper climbed into my lap, purring, trying to comfort me in the only way she knew how. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 47 text messages. Most of them from people I barely knew, people who'd been at that dinner. OMG, are you okay? That was so brutal. I can't believe Marcus did that. But mixed in were other messages. Messages that cut even deeper. He was just being honest, though. You kind of did let yourself go. Maybe take this as a wake-up call? 3 messages from people I'd considered friends, people I'd met through Marcus, all essentially saying the same thing. I deserved it. Couldn't sleep that night. At 3 in the morning, I was lying in bed, scrolling mindlessly through social media, and that's when I saw it. Marcus had posted an Instagram story. He was at a club, his arm around a beautiful brunette with perfect makeup and a designer dress. The same woman from the restaurant. The one who'd looked away. She was wearing his jacket. The caption read, "Out with my real one," followed by a heart emoji. The comments were already rolling in. Congrats on dodging that bullet, bro. She wasn't on your level anyway. Upgrade complete. I sat there in my dark apartment, staring at that photo, and something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just a breakup. This wasn't just public humiliation. This was calculated, planned, deliberate. Marcus hadn't just dumped me. He'd orchestrated an entire performance designed to destroy me as publicly and thoroughly as possible. Why? What had I done to deserve this level of cruelty? I called in sick to work the next day. It was the first time I'd missed a shift at Children's Memorial Hospital in 2 years. I was a pediatric nurse, and I loved my job, loved those kids, but I couldn't face anyone. I couldn't put on scrubs with cartoon characters and pretend to be okay while I wiped kids' noses and gave them juice boxes. I stayed in bed for 16 hours straight, not eating, barely moving, just replaying every moment of the past 18 months in my head. Marcus and I had met at a hospital charity gala. I'd been there representing the pediatric unit, wearing a simple black dress I'd bought on sale, feeling out of place among all the wealthy donors in their designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Marcus had approached me at the bar, all confidence and charm. "You have the kindest eyes I've ever seen," he'd said, and I'd actually blushed. Me, a 28-year-old woman who should have known better. He'd swept me off my feet completely. Helicopter rides over the city. Weekend getaways to bed and breakfasts in wine country. Designer gifts that I'd protested were too expensive. But he'd insisted. "I just want to spoil you," he'd said. "You work so hard taking care of everyone else. Let me take care of you." It had felt like a fairy tale. Like I'd finally found someone who saw me, who valued me, who wanted to build a life with me. But looking back now, with the clarity that comes from devastation, I could see all the red flags I'd ignored. He'd never introduced me to his family. When I'd asked about them, he'd been vague. "They're distant, complicated. I don't really talk to them." He'd been equally vague about his job. "Financial consulting," he'd say. "Lots of client confidentiality. Pretty boring stuff." I'd never been to his office, only seen it in photos he'd shown me. A corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of downtown. He'd started criticizing me slowly, so gradually I hadn't noticed the pattern. First, it was gentle suggestions. "Maybe try wearing your hair down more often. It's prettier that way." Then it was fashion advice. "That dress is cute, but it doesn't really flatter your figure. Here, I bought you something better." Then it was my friends. "I don't know, Claire. Sarah seems kind of negative. Do you really want that energy in your life?" One by one, I distanced myself from the people who cared about me, convinced that Marcus knew best, that he was just looking out for me. 3 days after the restaurant incident, I was still in the same pajamas, hair unwashed, surviving on crackers and the occasional glass of water, when someone knocked on my door. I ignored it. They knocked again, harder this time. Then a woman's voice came through the door. "Claire, I know you're in there. We need to talk." I didn't recognize the voice. I stayed silent, hoping whoever it was would give up and leave. "My name is Vanessa. I worked with Marcus. Please, this is important." Something in her tone made me get up. I looked through the peephole and saw a young Asian woman with a pixie cut and a nose ring, holding a Starbucks tray and a paper bag. She looked up at the peephole like she knew I was there. "I brought coffee and croissants. Just 5 minutes. Please." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Vanessa pushed past me into my apartment before I could change my mind, set the coffee and food down on my small kitchen counter, and turned to look at me with an expression that was part pity, part determination. "Jesus, you look like hell. When did you last eat?" "Couldn't remember." She pulled a croissant from the bag and physically placed it in my hands. "Eat first. Then we'll talk." There was something about her no-nonsense attitude that made me obey. I took a bite of the croissant, and my stomach growled, reminding me that I was, in fact, starving. "I quit my job yesterday," Vanessa said, pulling out one of my mismatched kitchen chairs and sitting down like she owned the place, "because I found out what Marcus really does for a living." I swallowed my bite of croissant. "He's a financial consultant." Vanessa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Is that what he told you?" "Claire, Marcus doesn't work in finance." "Well, he does, but not the way you think. He runs a consultation business for rich men. He teaches them how to manipulate women. He literally writes their dating profiles, coaches them through texts, plans their dates. He gets paid $5,000 to $15,000 per transformation package." The croissant turned to ash in my mouth. "What?" Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a website. "The DeVaughn method," it read. "Turn any woman into your ideal partner." There were testimonials from men, before and after photos of couples, promises of guaranteed results. My stomach turned. "You were case study number 47, Vanessa continued, her voice gentle but firm. "He used your entire relationship to create something called the Humble Girl Upgrade Course. That dinner, the public humiliation, that was all filmed. He has hidden cameras everywhere. He was planning to sell the footage as training material. How to exit gracefully, he was going to call it." I ran to the bathroom and threw up the croissant I'd just eaten. When I came back, shaking and pale, Vanessa handed me a glass of water and a USB drive. "Everything is on here," she said. "Every file, every video, every message, every document. I spent 8 months collecting evidence because, Claire, you're not the only one. There are 6 other women right now who think they're in relationships with Marcus. And he's done this to dozens more over the past 6 years." I stared at the USB drive in my hand like it was a live grenade. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" Vanessa's expression hardened. 4 years ago, my sister Lisa was one of Marcus's victims. He destroyed her so completely that she attempted suicide. She's alive, but she's in long-term psychiatric care. She'll probably never fully recover. I took that job with Marcus to get evidence, to find a way to stop him. I couldn't save Lisa, but I can help you save the others. My hands were shaking as I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. What I saw over the next 3 hours made me physically ill multiple times. There were folders labeled with women's names. Each one contained detailed notes, strategies, timelines. My folder was labeled Claire Morrison Case Study 47. The first document read like a military operation. Target acquired at charity gala. Profile: vulnerable, recent loss of mother, isolated, financially stable, works in healthcare. Recommended approach: savior complex activation. Love bombing protocol initiated. Every single date we'd been on was documented with notes. Subject responding well to expensive gestures. Dependence building as planned. Beginning criticism protocol. Fashion first, then career, then social circle. There were photos of me I didn't know existed. Pictures taken when I thought we were alone. Videos from hidden cameras in his apartment showing intimate moments, showing me crying after he criticized me, showing him reviewing the footage later with other men. teaching them. See how she apologizes? That's submission. That's what you want. But the worst part, the part that made me want to scream, were the files on the other women. Jade Hamilton, 31, corporate lawyer, pregnant. Marcus had convinced her to quit her job to prepare for motherhood. Michelle Torres, 29, elementary school teacher. She'd taken out a $30,000 loan to fund what Marcus called a business investment. Aisha Okonkwo, 33, emergency room physician. She'd cut off her entire family because Marcus convinced her they were toxic. Priya Sharma, 27, software engineer. The note said she'd developed an eating disorder trying to meet his standards. Sarah Mitchell, 30, artist. She'd given him $50,000 for a supposed emergency. Keiko Tanaka, 28, entrepreneur. She'd signed over half her business to him. There were more files. Videos of Marcus teaching seminars to rooms full of men, showing them how to identify vulnerable women, how to isolate them, how to break them down and rebuild them into whatever the client wanted. There were financial records showing he wasn't wealthy at all. The penthouse apartment I'd been to twice was an Airbnb. The BMW was leased. The Rolex was fake. He lived in a shared apartment with 2 roommates and made his entire income from teaching men how to psychologically abuse women. I looked up at Vanessa, who'd been sitting quietly while I absorbed all of this. "The police," I said. "We have to go to the police." She shook her head sadly. "I already tried. What Marcus is doing isn't technically illegal. Emotional manipulation isn't a crime. He's careful about the fraud aspect. He has contracts, disclaimers, all of it. The hidden cameras are illegal, yes, but he'd probably just get a fine and probation. The system won't help us, Claire. We have to help ourselves." "How?" My voice came out as a whisper. Vanessa leaned forward. "We find the other women. We show them the truth. We band together and we destroy his business. We make sure every potential client, every potential victim, knows exactly what Marcus DeVaughn really is." I thought about those files. Jade, pregnant with a narcissist's baby. Michelle, $30,000 in debt. Aisha, estranged from her family. Priya, hospitalized for malnutrition. Sarah, her life savings gone. Keiko, her father's legacy business now half-owned by a predator. "What do we do?" I asked. Over the next week, Vanessa and I carefully reached out to each of the 6 women currently involved with Marcus. I wrote the messages because my medical training had taught me how to be precise and empathetic. The subject line was simple. "You don't know me, but we're connected." The message included just enough specific detail to prove I wasn't lying, but not so much that they'd dismiss it as a scam. Within 2 hours, Jade responded. "Who is this?" Within 4 hours, Aisha wrote back. "Is this a scam?" By the end of the day, all 6 women had replied. None of them believed me at first. They were all defensive of Marcus, which I understood completely because I recognized myself in every single response. But I persisted gently, offering to meet in person, in a public place, no pressure, they could leave any time. I chose the public library for the meeting, neutral territory, a private study room where we could talk without being overheard. Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. In my message, I only asked one thing. Don't tell Marcus. I didn't expect all 6 of them to show up, but they did. They arrived separately, each one dressed perfectly because Marcus had trained them all. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, expensive handbags. Each one sat far apart from the others at first, suspicious and defensive. I stood at the front of the small room, Vanessa beside me, and looked at these 6 beautiful, accomplished, successful women who had all been systematically destroyed by the same man. "My name is Claire Morrison," I began, my voice shaking. 3 weeks ago, the man I loved humiliated me in front of 53 people at a restaurant. He told everyone I'd failed his test to be wife material. He rejected me publicly, cruelly, deliberately. What I didn't know until a few days ago was that our entire relationship was a lie. An experiment. A case study for his business teaching men how to manipulate women. I held up the USB drive. "Everything I'm about to show you, I wish someone had shown me 18 months ago." I plugged the drive into the laptop connected to the small projector and started playing the videos. First, I showed them Marcus's website, the DeVaughn method, testimonials from satisfied clients, before and after photos, promises of transforming any woman into the perfect partner. Then I showed them the training videos, Marcus teaching rooms full of men how to identify targets, how to love bomb them, how to criticize them gradually until they doubted themselves completely. The room was dead silent. Then I opened the individual folders. I started with Jade because I knew seeing her file would break her, and sometimes you have to break completely before you can rebuild. The video showed Marcus with another woman, calling her baby, the exact same pet name he used with Jade. Jade's hand went to her pregnant belly. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The woman in the video was Keiko, who was sitting 3 chairs away, her face going white as she recognized herself. I showed Michelle the financial records. Her $30,000 hadn't gone to a business investment. It had gone directly to Marcus's rent and car payments. She started shaking so violently that Aisha, the emergency room doctor, instinctively moved to check on her. I showed Aisha the messages where Marcus had called her family controlling, manipulative, toxic. She could see now that the phrases were copied and pasted. The same script he'd used on at least 4 other women. "Oh my God," she breathed. He didn't even bother to change the words. I showed Priya the document titled Subject Weight Monitoring. Her current weight, her target weight, notes on how to reinforce the desired behavior. 140 pounds, unacceptable. Target 115. Comments on her progress. Subject developing desired food anxiety. Priya started crying silently, tears rolling down her cheeks, as she stared at evidence that her eating disorder hadn't been her fault but his design. I showed Sarah the categorization of her $50,000 loan. Easy mark, the note said. Guilt protocol successful. Subject emotionally attached to deceased father's memory. Financial sacrifice proof of devotion achieved. Sarah went pale, then stood up and walked to the corner of the room, her back to us, shoulders shaking. Finally, I showed Keiko the contract she'd signed, giving Marcus 50% equity in her business. Vanessa had found a clause buried in the legal language. Marcus got half the ownership but 0% of the liability. If the business failed or got sued, Keiko was solely responsible. If it succeeded, Marcus got half the profits without having contributed anything. "Oh my God," Keiko whispered. "I gave him my father's company, my father who died building that business. I just gave half of it away." For several minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds were quiet crying and shaky breathing. Then Jade stood up, one hand still protectively on her belly. "I'm 8 months pregnant with his baby," she said, her voice hollow. "I quit my law practice because he said a mother should be home with her children. I've been planning our wedding. I picked out a dress. I sent invitations." She looked at me with devastated eyes. "Is he planning to marry any of us?" I showed her the spreadsheet titled Current Projects. All 7 names were listed with projected timelines. Jade's timeline ended 2 weeks after her due date with the note extract maximum value then exit. Clean termination protocol. Jade sank back into her chair like her strings had been cut. One by one, each woman shared her story. Michelle told us about the loan, about how her credit was destroyed, about how she was working 2 jobs just to make the minimum payments. Aisha told us about her family, Nigerian immigrants who'd sacrificed everything to put her through medical school, and how she hadn't spoken to them in over a year because Marcus had convinced her they didn't understand her. Priya told us about the 2 times she'd been hospitalized for malnutrition, and how Marcus had sent flowers both times with cards that said, "Keep up the good work. Baby, you're almost perfect." Sarah told us about her art, her father's legacy, how he'd been a struggling artist his whole life and had died just as her career was taking off, and how she'd sold her 3 most valuable paintings to give Marcus the money he'd claimed was for an emergency. The paintings had been worth far more than $50,000, but she'd sold them quickly, desperate to help the man she loved. Keiko told us about her father's tech company, how he'd started it in their garage, how it had been his dream to pass it on to her, how he died of a heart attack 2 years ago still working 70-hour weeks, and how she'd signed away half of that legacy to a man who'd never contributed a single thing. We sat in that library study room for 4 hours, crying, sharing, recognizing ourselves in each other's stories. The same patterns, the same manipulation tactics, the same gradual isolation and degradation. We'd all met Marcus at professional events. We'd all experienced recent trauma or loss. We'd all been financially stable before him. We'd all been systematically isolated from our support systems. We'd all changed our appearances drastically. We'd all been criticized constantly and then love-bombed just when we thought we couldn't take anymore. We'd all believed we were special. The one woman who would finally make Marcus happy. As the sun started setting outside the library windows, Jade asked the question we were all thinking. What do we do now? Vanessa pulled out her laptop and turned it so we could all see the screen. Marcus's website, his client list, his upcoming live seminar, the DeVaughn Method live experience, $2,500 per ticket. 200 men had already signed up, scheduled for 3 weeks from today. We can't put him in jail, Vanessa said, but we can destroy his business. We can make sure every one of those 200 men knows exactly what they're paying to learn. What happened over the next 3 weeks was the most intense period of my life. 7 women and Vanessa, working together with a single purpose. Keiko used her business expertise to review the contract Marcus had tricked her into signing. She found that he'd signed under a fraudulent business license. The entire contract was void. She could reclaim her company. Jade used her legal knowledge to research what we could and couldn't do. The hidden cameras were definitely illegal. Selling footage of people without their consent was illegal. Using someone's likeness for commercial purposes without permission was illegal. We had grounds for a class action lawsuit. Sarah used her artistic skills to design a website. We called it the Real DeVaughn Method. It was beautiful and devastating. Clean, professional design with testimonials from all 7 of us. Our stories in our own words. The videos Marcus had recorded, with our faces blurred but his clearly visible. The spreadsheets showing his system. The financial records proving his fraud. Michelle contributed every text message, every email, every Venmo transaction. She'd kept everything, compulsively organized because she was a teacher and that's what teachers did. It created an undeniable paper trail of fraud. Aisha and I, both being in healthcare, arranged for each woman to get a full mental health evaluation from licensed therapists. The diagnoses were consistent across all of us. PTSD, anxiety, depression. In Priya's case, a severe eating disorder. In Jade's case, high-risk pregnancy stress. In Michelle's case, financial trauma. Medical documentation of the psychological damage Marcus had caused. Evidence that would hold up in court. Vanessa still had access to Marcus's client database. She downloaded everything before he could revoke her credentials. Email addresses for every client who'd ever paid him. Every man who'd attended his seminars. Every person who'd bought his courses. We drafted an email. Subject line, "Know who you're learning from." The body was simple. Just a link to our website and one sentence. The truth about Marcus DeVaughn and the DeVaughn Method. 48 hours before his live seminar, we launched everything simultaneously. At 6 in the morning, the Real DeVaughn Method website went live. At 8, each of us posted to our social media accounts. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. The same message. I was conned by Marcus DeVaughn. Here's my story. We included the link to the website and used the hashtag he'd created, reclaiming it for ourselves. DeVaughn Method. At 9 in the morning, Vanessa sent the mass email to every single person in Marcus's database. 2,317 emails sent. The subject line appeared in inboxes across the country. Know who you're learning from. Many of them opened it immediately. By 9:30, the seminar refund requests started coming in. 47 in the first hour. By noon, 123. By 5 in the evening, 187 out of 200 attendees had requested their money back. At 10 in the morning, the story hit the local news. Jade's friend from law school was an investigative journalist. She'd been working on the story for 2 weeks, verifying everything, interviewing us, building a solid case. The headline read, Financial guru exposed as systematic manipulator of women. The story ran on the evening news with interviews from 3 of us, faces visible, names public, telling our stories. By midnight, it had been picked up by national outlets. Marcus's response was predictable and pathetic. His Instagram story went through several iterations over the course of that day. First, lies from bitter exes trying to ruin a good man. Then, legal action will be taken against everyone involved in this defamation. Then, you don't know the full story. There are 2 sides to everything. Then a long, rambling rant about cancel culture and how society was trying to destroy successful men. Then the account was deleted entirely. He called each of us. We were all together in my apartment when the calls came in. We put him on speaker and recorded everything. With Jade, he tried charm first. Baby, you misunderstood everything. That pregnancy test wasn't what you think. I love you. We can work this out. When that didn't work, he tried threats. I'll sue you for defamation. I'll make sure you never work as a lawyer again. I have connections. When she didn't respond, he moved to begging. Please, Jade. You're carrying my child. Don't do this. Don't take my baby away from me. Finally, rage. You're a vindictive bitch. You and all those other whores. You're just jealous that I'm successful and you're nothing without me. The conversations with the rest of us followed similar patterns. Charm, threats, begging, rage. We recorded all of it and added the audio files to the website. Marcus DeVaughn true voice. No script. No polish. Just raw narcissistic fury. His business collapsed within 72 hours. The website was taken down. His social media accounts were suspended after mass reporting. The seminar venue canceled his booking, citing the negative press. His BMW was repossessed. Clients demanded refunds. Some of his former clients threatened to sue him for fraud. The man who'd made hundreds of thousands of dollars teaching others how to manipulate women was suddenly broke and exposed. On the 4th night, at 11 in the evening, Marcus showed up at my apartment. We heard him before we saw him, pounding on the door, shouting. All 7 of us were there. We'd planned a sleepover, safety in numbers, supporting each other. We didn't open the door. We just turned on the Ring camera and recorded. What he said was everything we needed to prove who he really was. You destroyed me. I have nothing. That baby Jade's carrying? I'll make sure I never pay a dime. You think you're heroes? You're just vindictive bitches who can't handle the truth. Everything I taught you, you needed. You were all pathetic before me. Claire, you were nothing. A mediocre nurse with no ambition. You should be thanking me for even looking at you. He tried the door handle. Attempted to force it open. That's when we called the police. Noise complaint. Harassment. Attempted breaking and entering. The Ring footage showed everything. When the officers arrived, Marcus tried to charm them too, but they'd already seen the news stories. They took statements from all of us. 7 women, all with restraining order requests. All with documented evidence of harassment. For once, the system worked. The restraining orders were granted. The criminal charges took longer, but they came. Wire fraud for misrepresenting his business services. Illegal recording for the hidden cameras. Harassment for the documented pattern of threatening behavior. Extortion when they found messages where he'd threatened to release intimate videos if women didn't pay him. The civil lawsuit was even bigger. 23 women eventually joined. Not just the 7 of us, but others who came forward after seeing the news coverage. Women Marcus had destroyed over the past 6 years. Some had attempted suicide. Some had lost everything. All of them deserved justice. Marcus settled out of court. $850,000. His entire net worth including seized assets. Divided among 23 women. It wasn't about the money for any of us. It was about acknowledgement, validation, proof that what he'd done was real and wrong and had consequences. He declared bankruptcy. His business was officially dissolved. He got 2 years probation, community service, and his name on every scammer database in the country. He'd never be able to run this kind of operation again. 6 months after that horrible night at the restaurant, I stood in front of my new mobile medical clinic. Claire's Care. a pediatric clinic serving underprivileged communities. I'd used my portion of the settlement as a down payment. The van was painted bright blue with cartoon characters on the sides. Pepper, my three-legged cat, had become the unofficial mascot. Kids loved her. Inside were examination tables, medical supplies, a small pharmacy, everything needed to provide basic health care to children whose families couldn't afford it. This was what Marcus had mocked. My dream of helping kids. My lack of ambition. But I'd never felt more ambitious or more fulfilled than I did standing in front of that clinic, knowing that today we'd treat our 100th patient. A little girl with a broken arm whose parents couldn't afford the emergency room. We set it, gave her a cast, sent her home with pain medication and instructions. Her mother called me an angel. I told her I was just doing my job. The 7 of us stayed close. We had a group chat that was active every single day, sharing victories and supporting each other through struggles. Jade sent a photo of baby Luna, her daughter, smiling for the first time. Everyone responded with heart emojis. Michelle posted about a date she had scheduled and asked if she was ready. The group assured her she was, told her to trust herself. Sarah invited everyone to her new art exhibition. Keiko announced her business had hit $2 million in revenue. Aisha shared that her father had told her he was proud of her. Priya celebrated 3 months without a binge episode. Vanessa posted that her sister Lisa had spoken in full sentences for the first time in years. 1 year after the restaurant humiliation, we met at Luminaire again. Not to relive trauma, but to celebrate survival. We'd reserved the entire private dining room. 8 women plus baby Luna. We weren't there to mourn who we'd been. We were there to honor who we'd become. We raised our glasses in a toast. To Marcus showing us who he was. To finding each other. To survival. To the women we were always meant to be. The website we'd created to expose Marcus evolved into something bigger. Reclaim Your Story. A resource for victims of manipulation and coercive control. It featured red flag guides, legal resources, a therapist directory, support group information, and stories from survivors. 10,000 visitors per month. Over 200 women had used the resources to escape similar situations. We turned our pain into purpose. Marcus, last we heard, he was living in a different state, working at a call center under a different name because his real name was too Googleable. He tried to start a new business, but it was shut down immediately. We were watching. He'd attempted to use dating apps, but his profile was shared in warning groups within hours. He was essentially blacklisted from the world he'd once dominated. The last confirmed sighting was a delivery driver for DoorDash. Then came the final piece of justice we hadn't expected. A private investigator hired by Jade discovered that Marcus had a daughter, 10 years old, from a relationship before he'd started the DeVaughn method. He'd abandoned both the daughter and her mother and hadn't paid child support in 8 years. We made a choice. We didn't expose the daughter. Children deserved protection. But we did contact the mother and helped her file for back child support. Marcus now owed over $150,000. His wages would be garnished for the next 15 years. I think about that night at the restaurant sometimes. How I sat there, humiliated, thinking my life was over. How wrong I was. Marcus told me I'd never be a good wife, and he was right. I was meant to be so much more than someone's wife. I'm a healer, a friend, a survivor, a fighter. I run a mobile clinic that's treated over 500 children in underserved communities. I have a sisterhood of 7 incredible women who have my back no matter what. I have a 3-legged cat who loves me unconditionally. I have a purpose that fulfills me every single day. Being someone's wife was never my purpose. My purpose is helping children who have no one else. My purpose is showing other women that they don't need anyone's approval to be worthy. My purpose is proving that you can be broken into 1,000 pieces and still put yourself back together into something beautiful. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, if someone is isolating you from loved ones, if someone criticizes you constantly then love bombs you back, if someone makes you feel like you need to earn their affection, if someone is making you smaller so they can feel bigger, please know this. You're not crazy. You're not imagining it. You're being manipulated. And you deserve so much better. I used to think love meant sacrifice. Now I know love means support. I used to think I needed someone to complete me. Now I know I was always whole. Marcus was wrong about everything except one thing. I'd never be a good wife. Because I'm too busy being an amazing human being. And that, right there, is exactly enough. Thanks for watching this story. I hope it resonated with you as much as it meant for me to share it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And remember, you are enough exactly as you are.